welcome to another at History Gems, and today we're talking about the Crusades.
So what was a crusade? Well, the simple definition is about 200 years between the 1090s and 1290s of Christian, Western, European armies marching into the Middle East and fighting Muslims. But actually, it's more complicated than that, and it's ironic that it's the forgotten crusade that turned out to be the most successful crusades from the point of view of the Christians. It all starts in 1095 when Pope Urban II declares that it was time to make Jerusalem Christian again. This was quite a delayed reaction because it had been Muslim for over 400 years. And actually what it seems to be is the papacy in the West trying to link up with the Byzantine Empire. This is the rump of the old Roman Empire. Nowadays it was based in Greece and Turkey, but in that period it was just known as the Byzantine Empire with its capital city of Constantinople.
Byzantium crops up a number of times in the Crusader story, but it first starts off, as I said, in 1095, where Christian armies marched all the way from Europe to Jerusalem. On arriving at the capital of Byzantium, Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, they moved into Anatolia, and pretty much from there all the way to Jerusalem, they're under constant attack. At one point, at the city of Antioch, they had a year-long siege, which they only just managed to win. And then in 1099, they captured Jerusalem and celebrated by having a huge massacre of everybody in there. Once the bodies had rotted away, the de facto situation was that the West now had multiple kingdoms in the Middle East, but was surrounded by multiple Muslim enemies. Going forwards a generation, you get the Second Crusade, where the German Emperor and the French King go on crusade. It goes horribly wrong. They pick the wrong destination, Damascus, fail to capture it, and that further unifies the Muslims against the Christians. Then, in 1187, Saladin beats the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin and captures Jerusalem, which triggers the Third Crusade, Richard the Lionheart, and so on and so forth. Then the Fourth Crusade is a further attempt to bolster these lands overseas, but it gets distracted and goes to Constantinople and ends up capturing that.
The people of Constantinople were Christian. They may be Orthodox Greek Christian as opposed to Western Catholic Christian, but Christians nonetheless. So now we have Crusaders, not fighting against Muslims, but other Christians. And indeed the next crusade, not the Fifth Crusade, but one called the Albigensian Crusade, is in France against Christian heretics. It's also worth rewinding quickly back to 1095. Yes, huge swathes of European knights went off to the Holy Land, but there was one group that Pope Urban II specifically said, don't go, and those were the Spanish nobility. See, they had been fighting for centuries to try and push back the Muslims in the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Spain and Portugal. They had had their own personal war, but because it was fundamentally between Christian and Muslim, it got mixed into the whole crusading ideal. So if you want to include those conflicts as part of the Crusades, well, they lasted for another 400 years and would eventually lead to the whole of Spain, the whole of Portugal becoming Christian, and now they are very Christian countries. So in that respect, the Christians won the Crusades in Spain and Portugal. But then there's Northern Europe. At the same time as the Third and Fourth Crusades were getting going, there was starting to be campaigns into the final few pagan lands of Europe. Yes, places like Estonia and Lithuania were still pagan, neither Christian, Muslim, or anything else really. And the Teutonic Knights, the German Crusaders, would force their way into there, and is why you get countries like Poland today, which are very Catholic indeed.
Back to the Crusades in the Middle East, sort of, the Fifth Crusade decided to attack Egypt rather than the Holy Land at all. Sixth Crusade was basically a remarkable hustle where the German Emperor Frederick II managed to convince the Muslims to give him Jerusalem without even a fight. The Seventh Crusade was back to Egypt, Eighth Crusade was further along the North African coast, and the Ninth Crusade barely happened at all. Really, in the year 1291 is where the classic Crusades end, because the Muslims capture the last Christian city in the Holy Land, Acre. But that wasn't necessarily the end of the story. There were many other religious battles, and indeed some of these people, like the Hospitallers and Templars, would go on to fight or be destroyed in the centuries to come. If you want to look at the last time the Pope raised a tax, a papal bull for crusade, that's actually in the Spanish Civil War of the 1930s. So working out when they start is easy, but working out exactly when they finish is much harder. I'm quite impressed I managed to do the whole of the Crusades in under 5 minutes. As always, Twitter, Facebook are the places to find At History Gems if you want more, but don't forget, At History Gems now has a book too. Do buy it, do rate it on Amazon, and see you soon.